So welcome everyone to what I think is one of the most anticipated and eagerly awaited sessions of the year so far, and certainly one for our conference today. We are beyond excited to hear from three of the top CEOs in our industry: Jeremy Mayle, Chairman and CEO of Outfront Media; Sean Riley, President and CEO of Lamar Advertising and Chairman of the OAAA; and Scott Wells, CEO of Clear Channel Outdoor America. And the three of them are here today to share their views and visions for our industry in what I think will be a really lively leadership conversation. So I want you all to virtually welcome Jeremy, Sean, and Scott to our stage today. Welcome, all of you. All right, I'll dive right into the questions here. As we all know, the coronavirus pandemic impacted all industries across the nation and the world, and it's not a secret exactly that out-of-home advertising was hit very hard, but we are bouncing back, and we are at a very pivotal time in our trajectory. So I want to start by asking you how resilient our industry has been and how fast you expect your business to rebound to pre-COVID levels of growth and prosperity. I'll start with you, Scott.
Great. Thanks, Anna, and thanks for having me on today. First off, coronavirus impact was really about place first. So when I look across our portfolio, we have markets that are performing ahead of 2019 now, and they performed well during last year. Whereas in the larger DMAs, and particularly in the northern half of the country, you had a lot more challenges. So the degree that resilience was needed was dictated a little bit by place. I think a second point is that the places that were impacted, what we're really seeing is that the digitization we've done, not just in sign conversion, but also in using digital data, setting up better analytics, has really set us up to come back strong. And I am seeing right now that the business is really responding well with vaccinations having gotten better, cases going down, and so forth. I expect that we're going to see a very strong Q2 and a strong second half. And then just two final thoughts. One thing about resilience, quality assets, no matter what format, no matter whether it was in our airports or in our roadside business or in street furniture, the top quality assets were in demand throughout. Those demonstrated the power of place. And the environment really did create some opportunities for savvy marketers to come in and build some strong positions during the time that was challenged. And we saw a lot of savvy marketers do that. So I think the resilience of the industry is really strong.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Jeremy, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, to state the obvious, when everyone was told to stay at home, it was going to have an impact on our audience. And we certainly felt that for the first few months. And I'd echo Scott's thoughts. It's very different depending on geography, and it's also very different, depending on type of assets. It's very clear that, transit, be it airport or rail, has been more affected than our roadside assets. But you know what? It's great to start seeing it come back. Audiences returned, really from June last year in the smaller DMAs, and while it's just a little bit different, maybe people weren't showing up in the city centers, then you're going to reach them out in the burbs. And now, frankly, the businesses are starting to fly. We've got obviously relatively straightforward comps when you look back to last year. But, we've recently just announced our second quarter outlook, and, we're going to be up in the 40s. So look, we feel great about the industry. We feel great about the investments that we've been making, actually right the way through COVID. In some ways, we come out, I think, as a stronger business that's sort of pivoted towards, a new virtual environment. I think we've learned hard and fast, and I have to say I'm hugely excited for the coming months and years.
That's good to hear. I think we all are. Sean, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, since this time last year, I have consistently underestimated our ability to come back. I remember, this time last year, we were all drawing down our revolvers and battening down the hatches and wondering what it would be like to be in the out-of-home industry when everybody had to stay home. But you know, as Jeremy said, and as Scott said, you know, things just exploded in June. And as summer turned into fall and fall turned into winter last year, again, every single quarter I underestimated where I thought we would be. And quite frankly, where we told our investors we would be. And I made the same mistake in February. As again, we just, as an industry, I think, have really turned the corner. Same sort of sense of place and sense of product, if you will. Our core billboard business has essentially already turned and is already writing business at pre-COVID levels. With the exception of some of our larger DMAs, as mentioned, you know, by Scott and Jeremy. You know, places like New York and Hartford and Las Vegas and Los Angeles, they're still a little challenged, but we're seeing progress every month there. And we think that they get to pre-COVID levels of business, you know, sometime in the fourth quarter. Our U.S. transit business is a small market transit business, and it's recovering relatively fast as well. We think that'll get to pre-COVID levels around the fourth quarter. So for us, it's really the airport division, which we think is a 2022 recovery story, and our Canadian transit division, which is mostly Vancouver. And that's, again, a 2022 recovery story. Everything else is going to happen this year and is happening, as I said, faster than a 30-year veteran of the industry even thought.
Well, that's good news. And, you know, we are certainly looking forward to, here in New York, to July 1st when the city is opening up. And I think that will definitely speed up at least the growth in this area. And I'm sure in some other, you know, urban areas, if that sort of trajectory holds up and people continue to get vaccinated. So like somebody said, I think it really feels like we are rounding a corner. Things are feeling a lot better. And I think we've learned a lot from the year that we've been through. So, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So hopefully this is the last big conference that we hold where we can gather at the bar afterwards. I hope we can do that next year, and I hope we can do that before that. So I want to talk a little bit about growth that we already touched on. Magna predicts that our industry will grow with 11.3% in 2021. And I've actually heard some higher numbers too. How confident are you in that number and in the growth of the industry in the coming years? And also, you know, as we are getting more and more digital, what role specifically do you think that data will play in increasing spend with current advertisers and drive spend from non-out-of-home spenders, which is, of course, important for us as we want to drive incremental growth? Jeremy?
Yeah, well, I'd certainly echo the fact that I hope the next time I'm talking to all you guys is at a bar rather than on, you know, the thankless Zoom that, you know, that we've all been putting up with, I think, over the last few months. So, yeah, cheers to that. So, look, yeah, Magna have got a forecast out there at the moment, I think, is for 11% growth. Group M around 18% growth, I think, you know, for this year. And actually, you know, so what that means is, right, we're back into building market share again, having taken a knock last year. And, you know, let's not forget what, you know, everything that's, you know, made out of home, you know, the growth industry of the last few years in terms of, you know, its amazing mass reach combined with its, you know, local targeting abilities. You know, we don't have those brand safety issues. We're not like digital that is going to have to be putting up now with a sort of cookie-less world. So we're all there. People are, you know, out, you know, is the new in. People are going to be rushing out, we think, over summer. And in an incredible frame of mind, I think, to, you know, to take our messaging after that sort of digital burnout that we've seen over the last few months. I think there's a joy to be going out. And, you know, it's fairly clear from the answers to the first question that actually, you know, maybe those estimates, you know, for the industry, you know, maybe they're a touch pessimistic. I think we're all feeling very, very good about where the industry is going. In terms of, you know, data, All of the, our businesses have been investing in data. We obviously have, GeoPath there. You're in as another industry data source. We're making great strides in attribution. We can now have conversations with advertisers that frankly are very, very different than they were just a few years ago. And all of that, I think, is going to be part of that, driving our market share again from here on.
Yeah. Anybody else wants to comment on that?
Yeah, sure. Coming out of COVID, a couple of things. Number one, it's clear to me that all the investments we've made in digital, in enhancing and engaging programmatic channels, and using data to help our customers prove out their campaigns, all of that's paying off. Our digital platform is pacing well ahead of 2019 and really has from the get-go. It's been easily the quickest of our products to come back. And as I mentioned on our earnings call yesterday, April was up over 10% for our digital platform over 2019. Super strong number. And our programmatic channel was up over 100% over April of 2019. So clearly, as an industry, not just Lamar, as an industry, our investments in digital, programmatic, and data are going to continue to pay off. But also coming out of COVID, all of the trends that were in place that were eroding the audience and fragmenting the audience of our competitors, TV, radio, cable, print, all of those trends were accelerated by COVID. And there was more audience fragmentation, more cord cutting, more going over the top, a rapid decline in print. All of that inures to our benefit. Their audience is eroding. Our audience is stable and growing. And that can only mean better top line growth, more customers coming our way, and quite frankly, a brighter future for out of home relative to our competitors.
Yeah, Scott.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jeremy and Sean really hit a lot of the big points. The one thing that I would add is that out of necessity during COVID, we developed verticals that we'd not had a lot of muscle with, because some of the verticals that were our biggest customers were the ones hit hardest by COVID, things like amusements, theatrical, restaurants, things like that, not QSRs necessarily, but more mainstream restaurants. And so we learned how to sell into other verticals. And I think that experience is going to pay huge dividends as our traditional categories start to, be able to open up. I heard just today that Broadway will be opening up in September. Not that Broadway is a massive category, but it's a category to us, and it's indicative of, urban movement and urban activity. And I think that is something that gives me a lot of optimism. I also think, these forecasts at some level, us hitting a 2019 level of performance isn't all that impressive given what our comp from last year was. It's going to be as we blow past that we'll start paying attention. But, to Sean's point, one of the things that was driving this business in 2019 was the fragmentation of other audiences. And frankly, it was also a perception that people were overexposed on digital, a la search and that type of digital search and social. Certainly, they've gotten way overexposed as a result of COVID, and I think the opportunity is going to be there for us to show how we can help build back their campaign effectiveness, just like we were doing prior to COVID.
Yeah. It's certainly a very different conversation we can have today than the one we would have had exactly a year ago. There's a lot going for us, and some of these new formats too, like OTT, are just very hard for advertisers to, figure out anyway. So I think our platform with a wide reach really over the others, not just for fragmentation but also for complication, really has an upside. And I want to drill a little bit more into tech and digital because I think it's really important. I know that the last event where the three of you were gathered for this particular panel, which I think was maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I know that then you spoke a lot about data and analytics and programmatic, which at the time was fairly nascent. But there has been, and you touched on it a little bit before, well, I think both you did, Jeremy and Sean, there's been real progress in the out-of-home space. It's now a real thing. So Jeremy, can you talk a little bit about how important digital optimization is to your business and how important it will be in the future, and where you think we'll be in the next 12 months, so a year from now?
Yeah, absolutely. Sean obviously touched on it. Digital is hugely important to our business, and we believe will be one of the real growth drivers as we come out of COVID. Actually, in talking about COVID, interesting that COVID actually has created some new brands for the industry. With the DTCs and with food delivery, suddenly, out of home is fashionable for the newest brands on the block, if you like. So for us, we continue to invest in both sides of digital, if you like, because on the one side, you've kind of got the hardware out in the field, whether or not it be digital billboards or indeed some of the significant investments we're putting into transit systems in particular, where suddenly you have these sort of beautiful live boards where you have video capability suddenly within transit systems, which we think is just going to be a huge growth driver. So you've got us and the rest of the industry investing in the hardware, and then the flip side of that obviously is the automation associated with content onto those signs. And when I say automation, included within that is programmatic that Sean touched on, which undoubtedly I think is going to be a tailwind for us in the future. So if digital now is round numbers 30% for the industry, something like that, you look at some of the other markets around the world and it's beyond 50%. We're only going to be going one way. I don't know quite when we get to 50, but that's I think where we're headed. And when you look at some of the criticism of out of home in the past was that it's inflexible, you could never get in, and unless you were booking 6 months before. Suddenly, right now, if you wanted to get a campaign right the way across the country using all of our digital assets, you could push a button and be up tomorrow. I mean, this is a real growth driver for our business.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of this conference will be about just that and the advancements that we've made. So for you, those of you tuning in, stay put, because there's going to be a lot about this. Scott, it's not all digital. How do you see the interplay between digital out of home and the rest of the out of home marketplace? And how do you think this is going to look over the next 6 to 18 months? And specifically for you, what notable growth categories is Clear Channel focused on right now?
Sure, and I think you're exactly right. It's not just about digital out of home. Digital out of home is an incredibly important growth driver for us, and we're going to continue to do conversions. We're going to continue to build footprint. To Jeremy's point he just made, there are markets in the U.S. where we're over 50% of our revenue coming from digital. That's generally driven by regulatory considerations and cities that have been more open-minded about it, versus not. So digital is important, but I think the broader digital mindset, the digital experience that we're providing, advertisers have a certain expectation at this point in terms of the level of insight they're going to get when they're planning, the level of insight they're going to get as they do attribution, as they try to retarget, as they try to integrate with other parts of their campaigns. And that's a big part of the story, and that's not at all just about digital. In fact, what happens oftentimes when we're using our tools for planning, we'll highlight that audiences are in places where, for whatever reason, we haven't been able to develop digital assets, but we still have printed assets there. And so our digital tools are actually causing us to be able to sell our print locations more effectively. And that's something that's been true really from the really from the outset of us using, digital like data. And I think one of the things you saw looking at the benefits of digital, and I think Jeremy touched on this a little bit as well, is you saw the ability to flex. And so one of the things that we're really seeing is more advertisers getting sophisticated about getting their high frequency locations with printed assets and then coming in over the top with calls to action on digital. That's a campaign model that we're really seeing a lot more of, and I think is going to be a key tool as we grow the business. To your question about categories, I talked about this a little bit before. There are the kind of COVID categories that have been strong. I think a couple of us have referenced them, things like DTC, things like food delivery, the over-the-top players. Certainly, we're continuing to focus on them because they're shifting to a post-COVID world and want to be prepared and want to lock in their positions. Likewise, the recovering businesses I referred to earlier, things like amusements and travel, restaurants, things along those lines are something we're focusing on. And then finally, you just look at what's happening in the marketplace. Real estate is a great category right now in much of the country. There's not a lot of inventory, but the realtors are fighting to get listings. Recruitment is a great category for us in a bunch of markets. So, some of it depends a little bit on where you are. Again, it's one of the beauties of out-of-home is that the experience is different depending on where you are and what the assets are. But those are the kind of categories we're seeing activity in.
Yeah, thank you. So onward on the technology track, moving over to something a little bit different. I want to ask you, Sean. It started last year, and I think this year we're really moving into the new era of 5G technology, which means that cities will be smarter. We will be able to use data much more intelligently and much more. It will make it possible for AI at grand scale, and above all for the Internet of Things to prosper. How can our industry be part of the smart cities transformation? And is Lamar currently engaged in urban transformation strategies? How are you thinking about this?
I think 5G is going to push us in a little bit different direction on what it means to be a smart city. Prior to 5G, a lot of the tech was enabling Wi-Fi in certain locations, and that was the smart part of the deployment. With 5G, you don't need that anymore. Really, it's not as relevant, as important. And I think that the smart part of the technology is going to be more about wayfinding. It's going to be about enhancing and informing the consumer as he or she has the journey about the city. And that's certainly what we're thinking about when we think about our transit and airport divisions. Again, it's I think less of an emphasis on what that place can do in terms of Wi-Fi, and more about how the consumer interacts and how that place interacts with the consumer. And I actually think it's going to evolve towards our traditional billboard structures as well. So maybe the appropriate term isn't smart city, but rather smart media, because I think our billboards are going to be more useful and I guess smarter, if you will. We all know the ways the little screen can inform the big screen, and the big screen can inform the little screen today. But I think we're just scratching the surface on that. And so I really believe that the definition of what it means to be smart is going to change, and it doesn't have to be a city, right? It really is going to be smart medium, I think. And I think out of home is poised better than any other traditional media to do that. And I think as our assets become smarter, we're going to do away with some myths about the industry. One of those myths being that we're hard to buy, which I think has been dispelled today. I mean, Scott mentioned that many of our customers buy across digital, they buy across print, and those executions, there's nothing difficult about that. And I think we can dispel that notion. with a few phone calls, you can buy the whole country, as Jeremy said. With a push of a button, you can buy the whole country. And the other myth I think it's going to dispel is that you can't prove out the effectiveness of your campaign with out of home. We can. And I think increasingly we will. That's my vision of what smart means.
Yeah, well, that is smart. I want to just ask you a quick question too, as we're talking about tech and investing in tech and transforming what you're doing. Lamar has been making some very interesting forward-thinking moves that I'm sure people are wondering a little bit about with your recently launched SPAC. Can you talk just very briefly about the motivation and goals for this fund?
I can. I'm going to have to look down and make sure I don't violate some SEC rules because we're still in registration. So I can't give too many details about it. But, at the end of the day, very, very simple rationale. Lamar, the parent company, is somewhat limited because of our REIT status in what we can invest in. Essentially, our mission by mission, we invest in REIT qualified assets in North America. That's pretty much it. But as we all know, the world of out of home is much bigger than REIT qualified assets in North America. It could be screens that are not REIT qualified because they either move or because they're located somewhere that renders them un-REIT qualified. It could be ad tech that drives our screens and enables programmatic channels. Or quite frankly, it could be international assets. That whole world is out there. We believe that we can bring to bear some of our expertise for the benefit of our shareholders by pursuing, those acquisition opportunities that are outside the REIT space, but inside the greater world of out of home. So, that's the rationale. And I've been told by my lawyers, if you want more information, go look at the S1.
All right, we will do so, and I won't dig any deeper because we're almost at time of this really, really interesting conversation. So I want to close out, by asking the three of you a final question on our conference theme today, which is future proof. And we're really talking about how we are arming our businesses, our advertisers, our clients, and our workforces for what's ahead and make sure that we're successful, in the future. What piece of advice would you have for our audience, which are both, our industry as well as advertisers, on how to start thinking with a future-proofing mindset, or with future-proofing as a mindset, and especially as it relates to changing technology and consumer behavior? I'll start with you, Sean.
That's a great question. And I think COVID has changed to some degree how we should view the consumer and the consumer's basic wants and needs. We've appealed to consumers through their head. We appeal to them through their heart. And I think today, more and more, if you're going to future-proof your relationship with your consumer, you need to also appeal to their soul. Because they care not only about being a good consumer, they care about being a good human being. They care about being a good member of their community. So I think as we think about what drives consumers, we need to be mindful of how we're affecting the community as we reach out to our customers. And in a sense, that's about ESG, but I think it goes, again, a little further than that. I think I'll use the word soul again. I think it kind of goes to the soul.
True. Jeremy?
Yeah, it's interesting. Look, I would certainly echo what Sean said there. We talk about, as a company, as Outfront, always acting with purpose. We are spending a lot of time thinking about diversity, inclusivity, how we can be good citizens. That includes certainly ESG. And, we absolutely are making, the investments in people and technology that will support those themes. I think that's where our future proofing is.
Thank you, Jeremy. Scott, closing out.
So agree on both those points. I just end by saying what I love to tell our clients, which is out of home's the team player that makes the team better. And so make sure that you're not treating out of home alone.
Good one. Well, I want to thank the three of you so much for joining me here today. It's been a really inspiring conversation, and I want to thank you for all your support of the industry and of the OAAA, and certainly of this event, and again for sharing all those really interesting points. So huge thank you, and onward and upward.
Thanks, Anna, and thank you guys. Enjoy being with you and seeing you. And Jeremy, I'll buy the drinks when we hit the bar next time.
There you go.
Thank you all. Thank you, Sean.
Take care.
Bye.